Okay, well, thank you for being here. I'm very excited to offer this talk again, how to get started in breastfeeding support. I have run this many times in the past, but I don't think I've run this particular session for about 18 months. And quite a few people have been asking me again since the beginning of this year about the different ways of getting into breastfeeding support. There seems to be a bit of a buzz this year, people keen to get into training and doing something new. So I thought, what a great time to get out this presentation again, and also, just talk. I've updated it, obviously, but also just talk a little bit on this subject, because it can be a bit of a minefield when you're first starting out and you're thinking, okay, I want to support breastfeeding parents, but I just don't know where to start. So that's what this is all about. So this is me. My name's Anna Lagrange. I have 3 kids of my own. I've been a paediatric nurse for 22 years. I'm no longer practicing, just educating in my nursing. But I am an IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. It's a bit of a mouthful. And I'm a lactation educator. And I'm also a meditation teacher. And I study positive psychology at New Bucks University. I will soon have finished that MSc. So that's where I kind of bring my love of neuroscience, mindfulness, and lactation all together into mindful breastfeeding. So if you're anything like me, then you will also love talking about birth, babies, motherhood, parenthood, and perhaps a bit of well-being thrown in there as well. A lot of people who come and work with me are very keen, well, in fact, everybody really, they're very keen to make a difference in their own community. And often they have, people come for their own different reasons. People train in breastfeeding. Sometimes it's because they have had a difficult time themselves and they either did get the help, they didn't get the help. They were either inspired by those who helped them, or they can really see a gap and something missing in their local community. And some people didn't. Some people, like Sarah was just telling me, didn't have a tricky journey or had challenges, but overcame them, and just love breastfeeding and just passionate about the subject. And for those of you who already work in the birth world, you'll know that you get asked about breastfeeding all the time. And I have a really strong belief that every single person who works in pregnancy or with new parents should have a good quality basic level of breastfeeding support, education. We don't really have that in the UK, particularly in our healthcare services. It's just unfortunately not really funded, the education side of it, that is. But I think things are slowly improving. If you're on this talk, you probably love working with others, like helping people to have changes and transformation in their life. And yeah, you'd love to spread that out into breastfeeding support as well. So the question is, why is breastfeeding support so important? You hear us specialists banging on about it all the time, and there's so many reasons. New families do need support. They need support with everything. Often we're left guessing, often we're left Googling, and that sometimes confuses us even more. And we're not supposed to kind of bring up infants, bring up our families just on our own, in our own little bubble. It's tough, and we need people to share that with. And we also, we like to have knowledge passed down to us. In many cultures, and even in some parts of British culture still now, and Western cultures, it would be passed down through the generations. Information about breastfeeding, information about baby care, that kind of stuff. But for over 50 years now in the UK, most babies in the UK are not breastfed for the duration of infancy. So they don't necessarily have that knowledge that's passed down. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, babies have been kind of brought up on this schedule. That's kind of been what society has told us. Babies need to be on a schedule. They need to be kind of on 4-hourly plans and things like this. That came from, not from necessarily from formula feeding, actually came from when women were in the workhouses and in the factories working. And so we've still, that kind of culture is still really, really at the heart of a lot of the information that our parents had, and still actually is out there now, kind of woven into the fabric of our society, and what is expected and what we're taught about how to bring up our babies. And that makes it quite a complex picture, but also often works against what bodies and what babies need when it comes to breastfeeding. Obviously, we don't necessarily in Western culture have our families around in the way that we used to, and in a way that other cultures do. We also have this issue about that breasts are sexualized, so breastfeeding can feel very uncomfortable to some people. So things like feeding in public and stuff like that can become a real issue. And it's completely acceptable, and not acceptable, but it's completely expected, sorry, that we would feel uncomfortable about breastfeeding when throughout our lives the sexualization of breasts has been something that has been you know, talked about and is part of our almost our subconscious. It infiltrates, you know, so many areas of society, but particularly media. So and so those feelings can really impact how we feel about breastfeeding and how breastfeeding goes as well. And also, and this is something I see a lot in the UK, is that breastfeeding flimsy solutions are not always given for breastfeeding problems. And that is where we have this lack of education for many health professionals. I was one myself. I was once a health professional who didn't have the education to help people with breastfeeding, but yet I was in a situation where I was helping people to breastfeed and not always doing it that well. Many years ago, thankfully, I can say now. So, you know, part of helping people to breastfeed, to reach their own breastfeeding goals, is to give them solutions to breastfeeding problems that are going to help them to actually breastfeed and not interfere with it. So what are the new experiences of new parents? So, well, breastfeeding, as I've already touched on, is biologically expected by babies and by our bodies. And that can mean that if breastfeeding does stop before people wanted it to, it can bring up really, really challenging and difficult emotions, even trauma. There was a study done in 2015. It was an audit actually of breastfeeding groups in the UK, and 80% of the women surveyed in that audit actually said that they stopped breastfeeding before they wanted to. So 80% is really, really high. And when I am thinking about the work that I do and why I do this work, that statistic is what really keeps me going. We need as many of us as possible to be trained in breastfeeding support, so we can help reduce that 80%, so that we can help people actually feed their babies in the way and for as long as they wanted to. We've kind of been over that, like what issues are there. But I think it's also good to know that back in 2018, there was again a survey done, found that 44% of breastfeeding services had been cut. And if you think about what's happened since 2018, you're probably getting a picture that there are really very few services compared to what there was perhaps 10 years ago. So things as far as cuts in the NHS and also in things like our children's centres are also significant. And I'm afraid I don't have many results and many statistics about this from other countries in the world. And actually, I don't have time to get into that today. I was going to start talking about how we know that the kind of formula marketing and things like that also impacts on breastfeeding rates around the world, which it absolutely does. But that's not what this call is. This video is about today. But what I'm trying to get at from this is that parents need you. They need people out there showing them how to breastfeed, explaining to them, telling them how their bodies work, helping them with solutions to their problems and giving them reassurance. It's so needed. So I would say that I would love for you to be the person who makes that difference in your community, whether your community is online, whether you're in a village, whether you're in a town. Even if you're a health professional and you want to make a difference on your ward or on your community team, if you are interested and passionate about this area, then I can't emphasize enough how much that passion and interest in helping babies to breastfeed is. Yeah, that's it really for that bit. So I'm going to run over, and I'm going to focus on the UK to start with, and then I will touch on some of the options outside of the UK. So in the UK, we actually have a pretty good setup compared to most other countries in the world. I know it's hard to believe that. I think UK and America kind of really leads the way with options for breastfeeding support, but we do have areas lacking as well. Every single year, especially over the last 5 or 10 years, there are more and more good quality breastfeeding courses and qualifications coming up. So that's really good news. But what's been available for a long time is becoming a breastfeeding peer supporter. So breastfeeding peer supporters are usually mums, can be dads, can be partners who have had breastfeeding experiences themselves, and they are trained as a volunteer to work in their local breastfeeding group or children's centre, or they may work in a hospital on awards. So normally the training is free. The training would normally be for around about 18 hours, so over a number of weeks. And so when I trained as a peer supporter quite a long time ago, it included childcare. So my son could be, you know, in a little nursery next door, and I did the training. And then you generally have to volunteer your time to sort of pay back for the course. Where I worked in Kent, we had to do one session a month, sorry. That was the kind of minimum amount having the training. I ran a weekly group, absolutely loved it. It was amazing. Such a great experience. So they can be run by a local authority or local health visiting team. But there are other organisations in the UK that run them, such as the Association of Breastfeeding Mothers. NCT also run some of their own breastfeeding groups. And I'm sure there's some other ones out there as well. So that's breastfeeding peer support. Great way to start, a great way to support mums. Really varies from area to area and group to group how much support you get after you've trained and how it might all run. But if you think, yeah, this is a really great starting point for me, the best thing to do is to go to your local group and ask them about it and ask how you can get involved. So just to say, with peer support, usually you have to have breastfed. I think in Kent we did train a dad who had supported his breastfeeding partner, but usually you have to have breastfed for 6 to 9 months. So that does obviously cut out some people if they've had a difficult journey, they haven't been able to breastfeed their baby for as long as they wanted to, or they chose not to at the time. It's unlikely they're going to be able to get onto one of these peer support programs. And then we have our charities. And we have lots of options with charities in the UK. So there's La Leche League, which train up people to a breastfeeding counsellor. They call it a leader. Usually they train people who have already been part of their community. So with La Leche League, you would normally go along to the meetings yourself, and then you might decide after a year or more that you would like to train up. It's quite a long training, normally takes around 18 months or so. Then you've got the NCT. So the NCT, they run a helpline and they also run groups. And their training really varies, but it starts off at around £650, and then they go all the way to doing a degree in counselling, which is, when I wrote this page, it was a couple of years ago, it was 6,500. So lots of options through the NCT. And with this, you are a counsellor. So these qualifications are very much around your listening skills, around using active listening, communication skills, and helping parents to solve and navigate through their breastfeeding problems through a counselling model. And that's why these trainings are quite a bit longer. There's lots of practice, lots of supervision. Really good qualifications that take a little bit of time. There's also the Association of Breastfeeding Mothers. They also have volunteered, and they also have paid course available now as well. So that would be for people who don't wish to volunteer but want to train with them. Again, the counselling qualification takes up to about 2 years. And there's also the Breastfeeding Network. Again, similarly, they have a couple of levels of training. So I think, again, with this, it's about finding out if you think, yeah, I do want to volunteer, or I would like to train with a charity, but I want something a bit more robust than just the peer support, 18 hours. It's about finding out what's in your area. The best way to train is with the charity that's working in your area. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to get your kind of practice hours in, and you're going to struggle for getting started with them, really. So find out who's local, get in touch with them and ask them what they can offer you. And some of these, again, with the volunteer positions, they generally require you to have breastfed your baby, for a certain amount of time. Could be 6 months, 9 months, could be a year. I do know that the newer ABM courses that are paid, they don't have an expectation that you need to have breastfed. So that is an option that's worth looking at if that interests you. And then I must touch on becoming an IBCLC. I'm getting so many questions about this lately, and it really warms my heart because I love being a lactation consultant. I was extremely lucky in that I had a health degree. So for me, I didn't have to do the health degree part of this qualification. So it meant that I was also I also was a volunteer at the time, so I had plenty of breastfeeding support hours. So altogether, that meant that I could obtain this qualification relatively quickly over a couple of years. For many people, it takes longer, and that's because the requirements are extensive. And I'm not going to lie, I actually think the requirements are unfair on a lot of people. I think that it's not a level playing field when it comes to becoming an IBCLC. However, it is the gold standard in lactation care. It's a wonderful thing to aim for, and I do know plenty of people who have not come from a health professional background like me and have gone ahead and have got this qualification, and wow, what an achievement, such a great thing to do. But just to give you an idea of what's involved, you need to have 14 subjects if you don't have a health degree. So health degree would be something like a nurse, a doctor, physio, OT. I think potentially if you've done anatomy and physiology, you'd have to basically take your transcripts and compare it and have a look, or perhaps even contact IBICL and see if that would be acceptable. If not, they've got on their website 14 subjects that you can that you need to complete. Some of them can be done on free courses, but generally it's quite a costly exercise. And sometimes you'll do a course to tick a box, and it's not necessarily going to be the best quality course in that area. And I think that's a bit of a shame, really. But it's a really there's groups on Facebook, and there are people that can support you through this process because they've already done it. The next bit is you need 1,000 hours of supporting breastfeeding in a supervised setting, and this can be really challenging again if you're not a health professional or if you're not volunteering. There are some quite strict guidelines on how you are going to get those 1,000 hours directly with a breastfeeding mum, and that's something you would need some support and mentorship around. And then you need 19 hours of a lactation education course. That's almost the easiest bit, really, because you just can book on a course, or you can do lots of different courses that you feel that add up to what's required for the exam. It's actually 95 hours now. Sorry, I need to change that because I've just changed it. The 5 hours have to be in communication or counselling skills. And then finally, you have a 4-hour exam, which is based on a blueprint. So you can just study that blueprint and study the subjects for that exam. So it is quite an undertaking, and you have to do it all within 5 years. So that gives you an idea of how much of breastfeeding support hours you need to do. And I'll just say I'll touch on what's available outside the UK. And as I said, in some ways we're quite lucky. What some places do have, so in America, for example, there's a lot more lactation consultants that are available. They're available in all hospitals, and there's generally a lot more breastfeeding support around in the community, which is a really good thing. That's probably the main reason why their breastfeeding rates are higher than ours, even though they don't have as much maternity leave as in the UK. So they have a kind of middle ground qualification, which is called a certified lactation counsellor. and that is something that you can do. They've also got courses called Certified Breastfeeding Counsellor. So these are still counsellor-based courses. They just have slightly different names. In Australia, they've got the Australian Breastfeeding Association, and they have a breastfeeding counsellor course as well. And they also have charities. And I had a look up in South Africa. South Africa is where I'm living right now. And here it's tricky. It's very hard to become a lactation professional if you're not a health professional in this country. But they do have the Leche League. So if you're in South Africa and you are keen to get into breastfeeding support, finding out if you've got the Leche League near you would be a really good step to take. Now I'm going to move on to training with us and what our courses are like. So the Mindful Breastfeeding School started up in 2017, and we started training professionals, people to become mindful breastfeeding practitioners and supporters in 2018. So this is our 5th year now. We started off with face-to-face courses, mainly in London, but also used to travel a little bit. And now everything is 100% online. And will remain that way for now. To train with us at the Mindful Breastfeeding School, you do not have to have breastfed your own baby. You just have to have a passion for supporting expectant and breastfeeding families. And when you train with us, our training is different in the way that we focus very much on emotional well-being. That is at the centre of our courses. Our course is new. We're working on the accreditation for it now, but our last course, which the content has been improved, is accredited. So it's going to be accredited very soon by Thinktree Hub, who accredited our last course. And it can be completed in about 16 weeks if you were to study around about 2 hours a week. Some people do it quicker than that. Some people take longer. It's really up to you. We've set up a course that is really flexible, blended learning model. So Mindful Breastfeeding and Mindful Breastfeeding School is the only breastfeeding education that includes the brain-body connection and lactation, and gives you mindfulness and positivity tools for supporting mental well-being and breastfeeding. As far as I know, there are new courses popping up under different names for parents and things like that, but certainly for teaching you guys, as far as I'm aware, we're the only course that still the only course that does that. And when we're teaching breastfeeding, when we're teaching a breastfeeding class, education, or whether we're doing kind of one-to-one support or group support, whatever it is, we run by this philosophy that we're interested in the mind, the body, the breastfeeding body, and the connection between the baby and the parent. So all of our classes and sessions follow this same simple principle. So we're more than just that kind of practical skills, and it's more than just those listening skills. We kind of link it all together. We also have a wellbeing philosophy that runs through everything that we do. And this is what really sets mindful breastfeeding support apart, apart from other types of your standard breastfeeding support. We are passionate about self-compassion. We believe that new parents so often are really, really tough on themselves. They're very critical of themselves. They often feel like they should be doing better. And we start our support with encouraging them to see the good that they're doing, to see how well they're doing, to be kind to themselves as they would to a loved one or best friend. We know about the importance of the physical body and how emotions can get stuck in our body, and how moving and being comfortable and relaxed makes a big difference. We teach about the autonomic nervous system. I'm not going to get into that today. That's a little bit of a scary word, but that's basically about relaxation. It's really teaching parents that relaxation makes a huge difference to how their breastfeeding body works, and it makes a difference to how they connect with their baby as well. And that's what we teach. We teach these really simple, easy tools to parents that can help them to relax, to feel better about themselves, to bond with their baby, and in turn, their milk flows better. We have tons of research and science to back that up. And it's just not used enough in breastfeeding support, and that's what we're really passionate about. We're also passionate about community, and there's mindful breastfeeding classes and courses running all over the country. Exploration is also a big part of what we do with parents. So we really encourage them to think about how they feel. I'm going to give you an example of this. We, in the beginning, I was talking about how in the UK, we have this kind of sexualization of breasts, and that can really impact people's journey. One of the things we do in our antenatal classes is we really encourage conversation between couples. How do you actually feel about breastfeeding your baby? Do you feel okay about it? Are you worried about it? How your family feel? How your family about breastfeeding? Because everybody's story is different. And what I find is that couples often haven't, if they are in a partnership, they often haven't even had the conversation around that. They've just sort of said, yeah, I think we'll try and breastfeed, and that's about it. So starts this kind of level of communication where they're starting to think about, okay, what's life going to be like with our baby, and how are we going to make this work, and what challenges might come up from a kind of emotional and a belief level. And then finally, self-belief. There is absolutely masses of research that shows that self-belief, or sometimes we call it self-efficacy, in somebody's belief to be able to do something they want to, such as breastfeed their baby, when people have a higher self-belief, they are much more likely to reach those goals. And so we work on this a lot through all kinds of different tools. So I just want to share a little bit about, that's really where we come from when it comes to the breastfeeding support that we give. So what happens on our courses? Well, what do people get from being on our course? It's incredibly flexible. So this isn't the kind of course where you go away and you have to just teach a class in a certain way. In fact, when we first started out, we used to kind of give people the tools and say, right, off you go. But now we do give you a lot more teaching resources and a lot more support and help, so that if you are not already working with parents in a certain way, we can help you to get set up. So we offer you antenatal classes, you get you obviously learn how to teach it all, but then you also get presentations, you get games, you get all the resources you need for that, and a teaching plan. We also offer resources for one-to-one sessions in pregnancy, and also for a postnatal course as well. We call it Mindful Baby, which is a kind of wellbeing course for parents and babies. And some people will just work one-to-one with families, some people will work in groups. It really is up to them. I'm just going to... and some people run breastfeeding groups, some people run their own free groups, some people run paid groups. Really, the sky's the limit. Whatever you think and you feel is needed and would be helpful to your community, we will support you to do it with the tools and resources that we've got. It is completely flexible to fit into your current role or business. So if you are a doula and you're working with families one-to-one in their homes, it's perfect. You have so much time to spend working on this stuff with families. If you are a hypnobirthing instructor and you're already running birthing classes, mindful breastfeeding classes are just the perfect add-on continuation of the support that the education you're already given to couples. The nice thing is that when you add breastfeeding services onto your birth services, preparation services, you're not having to go out and look for new clients. You've already got the clients there, and you can say, right, well, we've finished the birth prep now, or you've had your baby, here's the support I give you after your baby's born, or here is my breastfeeding infant feeding class, would you like to come along? So they're really flexible, and you can kind of run them anywhere. We've got people who run these courses outside, we've got people who run them online, and we've got people who run them in their homes, and people who run them in their own space or a hired space. So they're, again, really, really flexible to whatever is going to work for you. And we kind of help you look at that and think about it as well. Here's just some feedback from Rebecca, who's one of the midwives who's trained with us. She really loved mindful breastfeeding and the difference that it made to her practice. So here's how the course works. So for those of you who do not have a breastfeeding qualification already, you will start off at foundations. And foundations is our first level, where we do the kind of what you might call the kind of peer support level training. We go a little bit further than peer supporters, because I teach you about, you know, how breastfeeding works. Latching and positioning is such a big part of this. I think when we are able to support people to get comfortable in a deep latch, for most people, that's going to help breastfeeding to go really well. Some people might need a bit of extra support, and we teach you about problem solving, and common breastfeeding issues, and, you know, what you are able to help with, and then when you need to refer on. We also cover communication skills, how to know if baby's getting enough milk, what to expect, pumping, supplementation, all of that kind of stuff. Then once you finish that foundations, which we do over 6 weeks in sort of, we have a live teaching day together. And then once you've done that, you move on to the program. And the program is the mindful breastfeeding stuff. So this is where you get your psychology, your mindfulness teaching, your wellbeing teaching, and you get to really understand how you then can incorporate that into working with your own community. Flourish is the final section, which is where we help you to grow your own business. Not everybody needs this bit, but it's just a really lovely section that thinks about how can you grow a business aligned with your vision and values, including family life. Not everybody who comes to work with us has their own young family, but a lot of people do. So it's all about how can you balance these two things together. For some people, they've got another job as well. This is kind of like a side hustle. This is like an extra thing they're wanting to run. So I really, because I am a wellbeing practitioner, I really like to help people make sure that they have well-being in their own lives. We're not just teaching this stuff, we're living it as well. So here's kind of the model. So here's the foundations that sits at the bottom. If you're already training breastfeeding store, you start here and you work up through the program. Bedrock, which is kind of the principles of mindful breastfeeding. Discovery is where you learn about the different tools and you try them out. Consolidation is thinking about how, you know, really consolidating those tools into your own life first. We have an inside out model of learning where we have to be comfortable and understand the difference in the transformation that tools can make before we share them with others. Integration is about your own services, and flourish I've just spoken about. So our next course, we only run the foundations course twice a year, and the next course starts on the 27th of February. We have a live teaching day on the 6th of May. So that's the day where at the end of the foundations module, we get together, we do lots of practical, fun, latching on communication skills. It's a great day. People tell me it's their favourite part of the course. And then once you've done that, you move on to the programme. All the way through your training, you have weekly, so the content's there for you to access in a way that works for you. Some people who train with us are working, so they like to do their study in the evenings. Some people in the evenings, they're putting their kids to bed, so they'd rather do their study in the day. So you have the content there ready online. It's video and workbook based. You can also listen to them with audio files if that's a preferred way of learning for you. And then every single week we have a support / Q&A session where you can access me, ask any questions that have come up that week. And that's all the way through your training with us, however long you may take over the course. This is the cost of the course. So the course with the foundations training and the programme together is £1,150. There's also a 9-month payment plan option, and everything there is written there. So as I said, you've got the video classes, the interactive live sessions. There's only one live session, sorry, we've put it into one now on a Saturday rather than two, so please ignore that too there. All the class outlines and presentations, all the MP3s and resources that you need. Once you train with us, we don't just let you go. There's always ongoing support. We have a very active and busy practitioner Facebook group, which is a really nice place to be. You get resources posted to you, and we have a directory. So once you're up and running, we share mindful breastfeeding practitioners' details out on the internet, and we always give you clinical supervision support as well. And then access all areas is just another option for anybody who feels like they'd like some kind of mentorship alongside their training. you get everything exactly the same, but you also get a whole year of mentorship with me from the start of the course right through to 12 months later. So for a lot of people, they'll do the training over 4 months or 5 months, and then you'll get another another 7 months of coaching with me afterwards. So really good for somebody who wants to set up a business from scratch and wants to just go for it, or somebody who wants to kind of change and alter their business and do it differently. I love supporting people in that way. So that's also an option for you if you would like that. And we have a course that goes alongside with that as well, called our Flourish coaching course. And people always want to know, because it's a lot of money, you know, it is. And training is, yeah, it's important to understand, you know, how are you actually going to get your money back once you've invested in this course. I totally get it. So just to give you some examples, and I've used really wide-ranging charges here because it varies so much depending on who. Somebody who I train in Central London, for example, is going to charge differently to someone who maybe is in Cornwall or Wales or York. I don't know. So I'm just saying that that's why there's such a wide range of pricing. But just to give you an idea, 3 antenatal session course, 75 to 150 per couple. I do know someone who charges 200 per couple for that, because that's the kind of area they work in. So again, really, in fact, I've got people who work with just very high-end professional clients who charge thousands. So really the sky is the limit. But, you know, let's think about the average of what people charge who train with me. It's in this price range. And we've got a 6-week Mindful Baby course that's between £60 and £120 per parent and child. And again, £60 is normally if it's online, £120 would be more of an in-person one. So if you were to run one of these, each of these a month, so 1 antenatal and 1 postnatal, with between 4 and 6 people, you'd be looking at bringing in between 540 and 1,620. So you can see once your classes are up and running and you've got people in them, that it's really quite quick. You can pay back the investment that you've made in training with us. So I hope that helps explain that a little bit. This is lovely Rashmita. I don't know if this video is going to work. I will see.
And talk to you a little bit about my experience with the Mindful Breastfeeding Practitioner course and the business coaching. My name is Rashmita Batharu, and I run a program called the Mama Level Up Program, which is a program for new first-time moms, and it's all about mindful breastfeeding and baby sleep and mama mindset, looking at all of these things together and helping new moms thrive in the first few months of motherhood. So I did the Mindful Breastfeeding Practitioner course in November last year, and I have to say it is the best course that I have done on breastfeeding. I've done a few, but this was amazing. The content was so good, and everything was so clearly set out, so easy to follow. And the support that Anna gave was second to none. If I had any questions, she was always available to answer anything, and really, really knowledgeable about everything you can think of to do with breastfeeding. So if you were thinking of doing the course, I definitely would recommend it. I did the course with the one-to-one coaching with Anna, and I have to say that if you're on the fence, you're thinking about it, I definitely recommend doing the course with the coaching, because Anna's, if you're running a business, sometimes when you are so kind of fully immersed in things, you don't really see the blocks that you have, the things that are holding you back, because you're so stuck in the day-to-day and the doing stuff, that it really having Anna as a business coach really helped me, because I kept getting stuck at the same point every time, and I don't think I realized what I was doing until it took me kind of just talking things through with her, and then having someone from the outside look in and give you advice, and then they know what you did. It was really helpful. I couldn't recommend Anna enough. If anyone wants to talk to me about any experiences, I'd be happy to do that. If you're thinking about doing the Mindful Breastfeeding Practitioner course or with the one-to-one business coaching, I highly, highly recommend that. She's amazing.
So that is Rashmita. Very, very sweet and kind words from her there. So that's it. So if you've got any questions at all, whether it is about training generally, as a lactation consultant or as in any of the courses that I spoke about earlier on, I'd be very happy to talk to you further. If you've got any questions about mindful breastfeeding training, what it's like to be a practitioner, or any particular questions about the course that I haven't covered, then please get in touch with me. I'm going to put a link underneath